Hello, my name is Ashley, this is Faithful Rattos, and welcome or welcome back. So in today's video, I'm going to be talking to you about everything you need to buy before you get rats. And I'm also going to include estimated prices and what you can kind of expect to spend on each of the categories. And if there is a lower and higher range, I'll explain that too. I thought this would be a really helpful video for new and prospective rat owners, especially as I am going to be embarking on breeding very, very soon. And I have already spoken to a lot of people who don't have rats yet, but are willing and wanting to have rats and applying to breeders and such, but they are unsure about the costs of setting up for rats. So that's what I'm going to do today. I hope this video is helpful, and yeah, let's just get into it. So the first thing you're going to need for your rats is a cage. Obviously, we can't have rats just roaming around our house all the time. I don't believe this is safe. Free roam is a really great enrichment if you can provide it, but obviously we need somewhere secure and safe for our rats to be because they are little menaces. They can get into little nooks and crannies because they're much smaller than a dog, a cat, or even a rabbit, and it's just not safe to have them free roaming, so they obviously need a cage. Now, I will say the absolute minimum cage size is 80 by 50 by 80 centimeters, and some of the cages that are appropriate at this size are really only appropriate for a small group. So do really think about which cage you're getting and how many rats you want to keep long term in the future. If it's your goal to keep a small group of between 5 to 6 rats as sort of time goes on, I would recommend getting a single level metal cage, like a single Little Zoo Ventura or a single Critter Nation. That way, if you choose to, you can also add on to that and get a bigger cage, but you can also go with the smaller but still acceptable cages like the Coco Large and the Mamba 100, but make sure it is the Coco Large and the Mamba 100 because each of these cages come in a slightly smaller version and those cages aren't appropriate. But these cages can range you a really huge price difference depending on where you get them from, whether they are brand new or secondhand, and which cage you choose to buy. So my estimate for this is you're going to be spending between £50 and £200 at least on a suitable cage for your rats. Now, £200 is probably the highest you'll pay secondhand for a cage like mine. However, if you're going to buy these brand new, then you're probably looking even more than 200. I think a lot of these cages are about 250 brand new, and if that's something that you want, which is absolutely fine if you want a brand new cage, I used to feel the same way until I wanted to save money, then you're going to have to budget for that. It's going to be quite a big investment, but these cages do last pretty well, and it is something that if you choose to stop keeping rats in 10 years time or so, or even 5 years time, you're probably going to get quite a big return on your investment and you're going to make back quite a lot of that. So really do consider, if you're wanting one of the small cages like the Coco Large, you may be able to find these for about £50 on Facebook Marketplace or Gumtree, places like that. So really do consider what you're spending your money on. Now, the next thing you're going to need is substrate, litter, and bedding. Now, these are 3 different things. Emiology has a really great video on this about the differences between these things, and there's also a really helpful article by Azuline Rattery on her website about the difference. Substrate is what you put at the bottom of the cage, litter is where they go to the toilet, and bedding is nesting material they use in their hiding spots. And these 3 things are very different, and you have a lot of option with each of these 3 things, apart from maybe litter, where I recommend paper pellets. So you're looking at probably about £15 for a bale of substrates if you're going that route. If you're going bioactive like mine, your setup costs are probably going to be a lot higher than this cost, but it isn't an ongoing cost, so there's swings and roundabouts there. I'm going to base my price estimates based on normal substrate. Then you have litter. As I mentioned, this is probably going to run you about £15 for a big bag of litter. And then bedding is really variable. I've estimated about £7 for bedding, because when it comes to bedding, you can use things like hay that's meant to be eaten by other animals. You can use paper shreds, but you can also use things that you get for free, like packaging paper from packages, duh, or things like paper towel, toilet paper, and these are things you're already going to have, so they are free. But in estimation, you're probably looking at spending £37-ish on substrate, litter, and bedding, and this is absolutely essential. You also will need a carrier, and these are probably going to run you about £15, whether you buy them new or you buy them on Facebook Marketplace and places like that. This is super, super important, even if you do what I don't recommend and get rats from a pet shop. The cardboard things they give you are just not safe for rats to be in. They are very flimsy and they are very easy for them to chew out of. So you really do need a carrier to even just transport your rats home in, whether you get them from a breeder, a rescue, or a pet shop, which you shouldn't do. But it's also really important in case there is any sort of emergency where you need to vacate the premises where you're living, or if you have to take them to a vet, or you have to go on a trip, or anything like that. A safe carrier is really, really important. So it's not something that you can skip out on even this early on in the rat keeping experience. Then you're also going to want a hospital cage. Now, generally, these are the hamster cages, the small, maybe 30 centimeter by 15 centimeter style cages. These are really, really important for you to have. They not only are going to be helpful when you do intros eventually, but they are also really, really important in case your rats get sick or injured and you need to contain them in a smaller environment whilst they recover. Never by themselves, but it is sometimes needed. And this, you never know what will happen. This is sometimes going to be needed in the first couple of weeks of you having your rats. You never know what will happen. I myself have had 3 kittens be very, very unwell and pass away. And so you need to be prepared for any eventuality, and you need to make sure that you have a hospital cage if and when they need. This is probably going to cost you around £10 to £20, and I do recommend that you buy these secondhand. And this is for 2 main reasons. One, don't waste your money buying them brand new because you're not going to be using them an awful lot, but it's really important to have. But also, we don't really want to be supporting the shops and brands that make these really, really small cages because they are trying to sell them to people to put a hamster in long term, like forever, and it's not acceptable for that. These cages are important and we really do need to have them for the things I mentioned, intros, hospital cages, etc. However, they really, really, really shouldn't be marketed as full-time permanent homes, and they are, so I would avoid buying them brand new if at all possible. The next thing you're going to need, and that is food. And depending on the situation that you're in, you may want to start making your rats food from scratch straight away, which if you do, I applaud you. That is not something I would have ever done. I do recommend it. I really love making my mix. However, it's probably cheaper and easier, especially while you're getting started, to buy it ready-made. Now, I've looked at different websites that sell this in the UK, a Schunemite diet style mix, that is. You're probably looking at about £15 for a 2 kilogram sized bag of rat mix, and this is probably going to last you the first month or so when you get rats. So this is really important for you to buy, and the supplements that go alongside that are probably going to cost you another 10-ish pounds. So the supplements alongside the mix are really important, so don't forget to buy those before you get your rats either. Just staying on that food theme, I also recommend you buy some liquid treats, and this is to help you to bond with your rats when you first get them. Liquid treats are really easy to put on your finger, so they have to lick it off you. This is a really helpful bonding tool, so they can't run away when you give them a liquid treat, and that's really the ideology behind that. So you can buy something cheap like Licky Licks, which will cost you about £1, or something more expensive like malt paste, and this will cost you about £5, which is crazy because it did not used to cost that. It used to cost like £3. But yeah, so this is something that I think is really essential when you get your first rats, just so you can really kickstart that bonding process. And after this, we are going on to cage accessories, and I've broken them down into a couple of different sections. And in most cases, you'll be able to find these things for free or very minimal cost if you wanted to, or if you needed to, stay on a budget, that is, when it comes to cage accessories. And there is always more expensive options and less expensive options. So I'm giving you like a range. You could spend next to nothing, or you could spend quite a lot, and either one is fine. So you're going to want to buy some hammocks. Now, you could probably just use old t-shirts, bras. I've seen people use like old bras as hammocks, or you can buy them from sellers who are specifically making them for rats, and so you're going to be spending between £0 and about £20-25. Then you're going to want other hides and baskets and things like that, and so again, you could be using cardboard boxes from food products or packages, and that's going to cost you £0. Or you can buy baskets and beds and stuff that are commercially available, whether that is from large companies or small businesses. And so you're going to be looking at anywhere between £0 and £20 for other types of hides. Then you're also going to want foraging toys. And again, you can use things like cardboard, toilet roll middles, free things like mussel shells that you've been eating for dinner as foraging toys. So you're looking at between 0 and maybe 25 to 30-ish pounds, because foraging toys are actually really expensive when you buy them like ready-made. So do consider that. You have many options and you can be the absolute cheapest possible and only use like free or next to free things, or you can, go to the other end of the scale and only buy like specific products. But you also can be somewhere in the middle and buy some things and use some free things as well. And then also I recommend you have some branches in your cages. Now you can get these for free from safe, untreated wild areas, whether they have fallen down or they're like driftwood or you cut them off the tree yourself. Obviously you need to sanitize and make sure they're dry and things like that, but you can do this for free, or you can buy them, and these are pretty expensive. So this range in price is probably going to be about 0 to 50 pounds at the minimum, because some of the larger branches that you can buy are quite expensive. So really do consider that. You can collect them for free or you can buy them, and I have both, and both work really well. And the penultimate thing I recommend you have in your cages are ropes. And again, you can make these from old clothes, old blankets, towels, etc., just braiding them yourself. And this is going to cost you next to nothing. Or you can buy them and spend up to maybe 25 to 30 pounds. And it's really up to you and your budget which one you choose to do, or whether you choose to do a mixture of the things. And the last thing that you really do need to include in your cage are fall breakers. So these are things like the complement tie holders from IKEA, or cargo nets, or any other sort of fall breaker. You can get fall breaker style hammocks, etc. And so you can make these yourself. As I mentioned, from old clothes and towels and stuff, you can make a cargo net yourself. Or you can buy them from people who are selling them aimed at rat cages. And again, this will range you in cost from £0 to about £25. And so it really does depend what you are willing and able to spend. You can set up a rat cage for very cheap. The cage itself is probably going to be one of the biggest expenses, but you can fill it up very well for quite cheap. Now, you're also going to want to have water bottles, so this is going to range you from about £5 to £10, depending on if you go for the cheap water bottles or the more expensive glass ones. I also recommend water bowls, and this is probably going to cost you about £10. I use these crock bowls on my cages that the support screws itself to the cage bars, but then the bowl itself will twist out, and so the water doesn't get spilled or anything. These are about £10 depending on the size of the bowl you go for, so this is going to cost you £10 about. And the last thing for inside the cage that I think is really, really helpful and useful and really great for all rats is a wheel. And this is probably going to cost you about £30-ish if you buy it secondhand, or about £60 to £65 or even £70 if you buy it brand new. These really do keep their value, and people resell them all the time, so you definitely can get them secondhand. All of my Tic Tac wheels that I have are secondhand. I've got 4 now, and I haven't bought one brand new because you don't need to. They do keep their value pretty well, and they do hold up as well. So that is something to consider, but that is absolutely not necessary, but is something that I do recommend if you can. And if we add up those prices and what you're looking to spend when you are getting your rats, you are looking to spend between £180 and £550 to set up 4 rats, which is really expensive. And I also do recommend that you have at least £200 to £500 set aside for vet bills. And so then you're looking at perhaps £500 to £1,000 on setting up 4 rats. This is really not a cheap endeavour. Rats themselves are quite cheap to buy in comparison to other animals. They're between £12 if you buy them from a pet shop and maybe £30 if you buy them from a breeder, but they are not really cheap to keep or set up. So it's really important that you consider, can you afford a proper setup for them? Are you able to get it? And are you able to maintain that high level of care throughout their lives, especially the vet care? It is so expensive and vet costs are only going up. So really don't forget about that when it comes to the initial startup costs when it comes to keeping rats. So I hope this video was helpful. If you want to stick around and subscribe or even become a channel member, I would absolutely love that. I make lots of content on my channel and on Instagram as well, and I make informational videos like this. I talk about my personal experiences when it comes to rats, and I also vlog my life with my rats. If that's something you're interested in, please do subscribe. There will be baby rat content coming up soon, hopefully, fingers crossed everyone. Hopefully nothing else goes wrong. But yeah, thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.